Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. After visiting Azerbaijan on Wednesday, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is in Armenia on Thursday, continuing a regional tour focused on peace, connectivity, and economic cooperation. The EU is backing that ambition with a proposed €200 million investment package designed to unlock up to $2 billion for projects that could reshape trade routes between Europe and Central Asia. Joining us now is Silvia Boltuc, Managing Director of SpecialEurasia. Thanks for being with us.
It's my pleasure. Good morning.
So it's not every day the head of the European Commission, that executive of the European Union, is in this region. First Azerbaijan, now Armenia. What does that signal? I mean, we have this headline announcement of money, but generally her presence there, how do we interpret it?
Well, I think that the interpretation differs depending on the country we are talking of. I mean, in Azerbaijan was defined multiple times by Ursula von der Leyen as a trustworthy energy partner, and clearly Brussels is pursuing since years its goal to connect Central Asia, particularly gas reservoirs, to Europe, as we are trying to diversify from Russia. And we saw also that hydrocarbons coming from the Middle East, clearly because of the situation in the Persian Gulf, are also becoming a very tricky issue. Therefore, Europe is really trying to enforce the middle corridor, the so-called middle corridor through Turkey and Azerbaijan, and trying to reach Central Asia and also China. So in this regard, I think that Azerbaijan is strategic as a energy partner and a connectivity partner. When it comes to Armenia, the political message is more important, I would say. Specifically, not only the presence of Ursula von der Leyen, which clearly is trying to shield the pro-Western orientation of the country under Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, but also the presence of the European Enlargement Commissioner Marta Kos, since a law passed in the Armenian parliament in 2025 was urging the European integration of the country, and therefore I think that they are also exploiting from some point of view this promise to Yerevan in order to cement their pro-Western and pro-European orientation.
Right, and as we said, I mean, this is right now going on. Ursula von der Leyen is currently in Yerevan, that capital, meeting with that re-elected Prime Minister Pashinyan. And in fact, let's go to that conference now and see what she has to say on that trip right now.
Through active work with them, we will be able in a short time frame to complete the process of this resolution being adopted. I hope it will be able to adopt it in as short a time frame as possible, considering that the harvest has already launched in Armenia. Dear colleagues, within the recent months, we have succeeded to register progress in Armenia EU partnership agenda. Another important dimension thereof, connectivity, that is. This is brilliantly proven by the Armenia-EU Connectivity Partnership joint statement. And last week in Brussels, there was also a connectivity agenda platform ministerial meeting, within the framework of which Armenia and the EU, as well as relevant structures, that is EBRD and EIB, have concluded an agreement about upgrading 3 border crossing points and doing a technical survey, and the letters of intent were signed about this. In the energy sector, there are important strategic programs for Armenia, such as the building of energy accumulation facilities, which will allow us to store the electricity generated by the renewable resources of Armenia. We have discussed with my colleague the possibility of European assistance along these lines, calling to life the concept of the crossroads of peace and in the context of inclusive transport incentivizing, I also apply importance to the promotion of energy connectivity, as well as with Azerbaijan and Turkey back-to-back stations and transmission lines, which may contribute both to energy security as well as to green transition. It's in the interest of Armenia to ever more tightly cooperate with the EU, especially in the digitalization area, AI and high-tech and innovation sectors, at the same time promoting an environment which will contribute to increased private investment by the EU. In this respect, I ascribe importance to Armenia's participation in the Black Sea undersea energy and digital cable project. Dear Madam President, dear Ursula, I would like to once again reiterate my gratitude to you for the close partnership and for the assistance extended to the establishment of Armenian democratic institutions and strengthening economic resilience. Continuous assistance there too, to the benefit of our nations and to the benefit of strengthening the partnership between EU and Armenia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister dear Nikol. It's great to be back in Yerevan so soon. Indeed, first of all, I want to congratulate you for your electoral victory. These elections have shown once again the strength of Armenia's democracy. The spirit of a velvet revolution which you led in 2018 is alive and well. Armenia is carrying on the path of democracy, reform, peace, and of a closer partnership with Europe. And I'm here to tell you, you can count on us. While Armenia is coming closer to the European Union, the South Caucasus is coming closer together. The initialing of the peace agreement last year was a history-making moment. The most consequential step this region has taken in decades. The same goes for the continued normalization of relations with Turkey. These decisions required political courage and leadership, and I know their rewards will be immense. Opening borders will transform Armenia's economic future. It will anchor Armenia in the heart of one of the world's most strategic crossroads. And we will stand by you to turn this vision into reality. This is why I announced a new 200 million euros global gateway package for peace through connectivity. With our financial partners, we aim to mobilize up to 2 billion euros for strategic transport, for energy and digital projects all across the South Caucasus. In Armenia, it could support projects currently under preparation, for example, including border crossing points and road infrastructure. So we are building real physical infrastructure for peace. And at the same time, we're building bridges between people. Therefore, I also announced a 20 million euro peace fostering program. It is aimed at communities that live along the borders. We want to support the local economy, the small businesses, the micro businesses, or for example, new farming techniques, water management, etc. We want to improve everyday lives. And we want to create new opportunities for dialogue between the communities. Our package will help people experience the tangible benefits of peace, so that peace takes root in the hearts and in the minds of this generation and the next. Turning now to the situation in your country, I know Armenia is still facing significant economic pressure from Russia. Nothing short of economic coercion, actually. But rest assured, when pressure mounts on our partners, the European Union steps up. And I have some announcements here too. First, you will soon receive an additional 18 million euros to help strengthen and diversify your trade. The funding can, for example, help establish an export promotion agency and boost the export capacity of Armenian businesses. These 18 million euro are the final part of the 52 million euro support package we discussed in our phone call early June. Second, we're going a step further. We are presenting a proposal for so-called autonomous trade measures. That means these autonomous trade measures will liberalize almost 80% of Armenian exports to the European Union. With this means 80% of your trade with us will now be tariff-free. And with this, we can reroute products that currently still rely heavily on the Russian market and send them to the European Union single market of 450 million consumers. So this measure will open the European doors for almost 99% of Armenia's fresh fruits, vegetables, and plants that used to be exported to Russia. And it will open the door for more than 90% of your exports of beverages and spirits, open the door to the European Union single market. In fact, over the past month, we have seen more and more Armenian flowers arriving at our market, and I think this is a beautiful symbol of a new chapter in our economic partnership. And this is only the beginning. With these new measures in place, you will have the means to diversify and to diversify fast. In mid-July, we will deploy experts to Armenia to work directly with your producers and your businesses and your exporters and help them seize all the opportunities that a privileged partnership with the European Union can offer. Prime Minister Nikol, on the 7th of June, the people of Armenia spoke clearly. They chose democracy, the rule of law. They chose reform and peace. They chose to open and welcoming and an inclusive society. And they chose to partner with the European Union. And together, we must now turn their aspirations into results. You can count on us. Thank you very much.
All right, so there from that press conference in Yerevan, the head of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, saying you can count on us, meaning the Europeans. So what sticks out to you the most here, Silvia, of what she just announced there? I mean, many points, a lot of economics there, but what's the one takeaway here?
Well, the important thing I would say is that they're trying to replace Armenia's dependency on Russia with exports towards Europe. But I'm afraid, and I'm not the only one in my field to be afraid, that it is impossible right now for Brussels to replace completely all the exports that were going towards Russia, particularly in the European environment. Well, the competition might be worse for Armenian products. Just to give you a brief example, Armenian exports a very tasty wine. Of course, in the Russian market, it's way more easy than in Europe, where you have, for example, French wine or Italian wine, and the same can apply also to other goods. Therefore, there are quite interesting analysis online you can find about this issue. So I really hope that Europe can support this transition, because Armenia is in a historical moment in which the society is really polarized, and therefore the economic support of Europe will be a positive sign that will help Brussels gain the trust of the population, specifically of the segment of the population that hasn't voted for the civil contract by Pashinyan. On the other side, I cannot fail to mention, as an analyst, also the democratic environment both of Azerbaijan and of Armenia. Many analysts in Europe, for example, during recent election in Yerevan, in Armenia, a parliamentary election in June, they highlight that the democratic environment of the country is worsening. So therefore, I think that Europe must really taking care also of this side, of this aspect of the society. Bringing fundings is way positive, of course, but I have also to pay attention to the democratic situation. And on the other side, when it comes to Azerbaijan, I remember clearly that Ursula von der Leyen was highly criticized when in 2022, she went to Baku while Azerbaijan was ethnically cleansing Nagorno-Karabakh from its Armenian population, and she shook hands and defined Azerbaijan a trustworthy partner. And even now, she stressed once again that Azerbaijan is working in favor of peace in the region. So I expect some backlash coming from NGOs in Europe or human rights association highlighting that actually inside Azerbaijan there is a huge crackdown towards all kind of opposition. We have scholars such as Bahruz Samadov or Iqbal Abilov who are in jail based on treason charge, which were clearly fabricated. So I think that in this case, given that Europe has been criticized lately because of double standard, it is really important that Brussels also pay attention to these issues.
Mm-hmm. But also interesting, when she was talking about her return, she mentioned that right away. Again, I think it was the first EU-Armenia summit, which is the beginning of May, and now here again, also praising the elections. She closed with that as well. Is there also something there? Is that another sign? Is there another message that she wrapped it up with very specifically about elections?
Well, clearly the support to Prime Minister Pashinyan. So I think that since he came to power with a revolution, which was the symbol of cutting relation with, not completely, of course, with Russia, but with the past, with some political figures which were more pro-Russian. I think that Pashinyan has become really the political leader which represent the pivot towards pro-Western ambition of Armenia. And so they really supported its political career, and also they endorsed its political party during recent parliamentary election. They went quite far. They also cited Russia. So they presented this election not as a choice between different political future, but as a choice between being Armenia pro-Europe or pro-Russia, which was also quite criticized. But of course, the country has become the battleground of our containment, I would say, policy towards the Russian Federation. And therefore, the victory of Pashinyan signals that the trajectory of Armenia will remain concentrated in its pivot towards the West, not only Europe, but also towards the US. We saw that also Washington has made some major funding inside the country, specifically not only with the TRIP corridor, which was the connectivity corridor promoted by President Trump, but also with investment in the artificial intelligence sector, which has become one of the milestone, I would say, of Pashinyan current policy.
And also, I mean, we mentioned this again already, let me mention it one more time about Russia. And in fact, that von der Leyen said very much there's an immense amount of pressure coming from Russia to Armenia. She said coercion directly to the media. Looking at also the money here, 18 million additional to help up, 52 million. Those aren't really big numbers. And what will Russia do as a result of this? I mean, are they now going to step back completely? I mean, this is still a region that they have interests and want interests in.
Well, of course, we are all aware of Russia is in a very delicate moment in Ukraine. It's in its war with Ukraine. Therefore, clearly, Armenia is not the priority. This doesn't mean that they abandon their aspiration towards the Caucasus. And I think that it will still putting leverage, exploiting the leverage, economic leverage, but also political leverage, and clearly, it's also a question of geographical location of Armenia. We saw that the border with Azerbaijan and Turkey has been closed since the 90s. So for Armenia, the only getaways were Russia and Iran. So given now the pro-Western orientation of Yerevan, it's clear that they are risking, because now they have to rely completely in the case if this situation will worsen. And of course, this is not only the relation with Russia, but this will also create some friction with Tehran. So if the situation will worsen, they have to completely rely on their borders with Azerbaijan and Turkey, two countries with which they had immense problems and even wars with Azerbaijan in recent years. So clearly the situation is really fragile, and therefore it's really, really important that they careful think all they move. And also from Europe has to also understand that it's really important founding, for example, connectivity infrastructure, because they are less political and they can really help stabilize the region. But they have also not to put, I would say, too much pressure on Armenia to cut completely relation with its neighbors, because at the end of the day, they will remain the neighbors. So they have to try to balance, as other countries did, for example, Kazakhstan and other countries who have been pressured to cut relation, in this case, in the case of Kazakhstan, with China and Russia for the same reason. But they have to they have to find a way to balance their relation. And I would say what is really important, what Europe also does, is bringing 20 million fundings. It's called Peace Dividends. It's a program that was launched to support borders population, which were affected by the war. And I think this is really smart coming from Brussels, because, of course, these are the population who are less inclined to support the pro-Western orientation of Armenia, as proved by the statistic, and therefore by bringing them also support, so not only in the capital city or youth centers, but also in this borders area. I think it's quite a smart move.
Mm-hmm. And also, let me ask you another question. I mean, you mentioned already this trip corridor, very much pushed by the United States. If we go back to May quickly, I mean, after that European Armenia summit, what followed was a visit by Secretary of State of the United States, Marco Rubio, also to that region. So I'm just wondering here, because Armenia has such a delicate path here. You have so many interests, Russia pushing one area, the normalization with Turkey on the one hand, Europe stepping in now, but the United States also involved very much. So is the U.S. here, just as an example, is that complementary with that of Europe, or will this be inevitably some kind of competition? Is there one of these powers ultimately that has more influence down the road?
Well, I think that it's not really a competition. Clearly, the U.S., they have way more power than we can exert. And also as a guarantor of peace, for example, and security, both, I think this is another really important issue to raise. Both Europe and the US, they have never mentioned that they will provide security guarantees to Armenia. Yes, there were some joint exercise, military exercise with the US, but there were no guarantees regarding security, which is actually what Armenia was seeking. I mean, in the vacuum left by Russia as a security guarantor, they were seeking someone else. So I think that this is a major point where Armenians are still scared, I would say. Indeed, I saw even Nikol Pashinyan, the Armenian Prime Minister, while stressing its pivot towards European Union, but is still recalling in its conferences and statements that he doesn't want to cut relations with Russia, and even with Iran, he's willing to sign a strategic partnership with Iran. He's clearly scared. He knows that he cannot push too much. So I think that this is another huge issue. And regarding the US, they made huge investment, but given the current war in the Persian Gulf, Pashinyan said that he was considering to postpone the trip corridor and to see how things will end on that front. But on the other side, the visit of Marco Rubio just few days before the parliamentary election in June, it was clearly an endorsement of Pashinyan. So I expect also coming from the US support to these political figure, and also, of course, to continue to leverage soft power and investment to pivot the country more away from Russia, I would say, and in the case of the US, probably also away from Iran and more close to the Western sphere.
All right, so many different interests there. I think this region will remain very much in the crossroads of many nations. Look, thanks so much for that insight. Really appreciate it. Silvia Boltuc there from SpecialEurasia. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure.
And thank you for watching. But stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.